Hey, I'm Jeremy Mura, and today I want to be showing you how to create some cool vintage lettering and type using sketches, using some inspiration on Pinterest, and I'll show you how to create it from scratch. And what we're going to do is be working through some different ideas and concepts and working through that and creating something really cool. So I'll show you how to, use the lettering and create it to make smooth curves and have great detail, as well as, using colors and palettes and patterns as well to create a nice cool vintage effect. So before I started doing my sketch, I went to Pinterest, started building up a board, finding some inspiration. You can see here, I was just looking at like lettering and typography. And the cool thing is when you look up like labels, like bottle labels for like alcohol or whiskey and that type of thing, you'll find some nice typography. You can see here, it's pretty cool. Very vintage and old school, which I really like. And when you're looking up this typography, try and look for the embellishments and styles of the type they're using. It's even good to look up Victorian lettering as well, because that's pretty old school and vintage. And you can see here, you're looking at the typography. There's so many different, versions and different styles you can do. But you want to take a notice to the embellishments, the flourishes, even the color as well. Do they use round corners or do they use like sharp type? Do they use more sans serif or serif fonts when they're doing their letters? So I try and do this before I do a lettering piece, and I just get some inspiration. You don't have to copy, you just get some bits of inspiration and then use your own experience and your own, creative mind to build out your letters and your style. And you can mix it up, just break the rules. It's all good. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can even see like this pattern. You see the lines in the background. That's pretty cool. And it's got some white outline there, which makes it a bit more 3D, which is pretty nice. Same as this one as well. You can see how it's got an infilling in the type, which is pretty cool. You might do that type of effect with this vintage type as well. So yeah, this is what I really do. I get some inspiration, look at some labels, try and look for physical objects as well. Even in real life, if you go to like a vintage store or an antique store and you can buy some like old, boxes or lunch boxes or whatever, or some old wooden, tablets and stuff, then you can find some cool stuff. Even like signage as well. Pay attention to signage. You'll probably find some cool type there. And you can see this is like really crazy, the black letter over here. But I try and keep my type pretty simple. I don't overcomplicate it. You can break the rules a bit. It doesn't have to be perfect. But, pay attention to the width, pay attention to the ascenders and the descenders, and the type. And yeah, and you'll find some cool inspiration. And then from that, you can, do some sketches and start building out a cool little logo. So after doing some inspiration and finding and looking at some cool examples, I jumped on to my paper, just had a normal Kansan paper and just a normal pencil and did some sketches, started throwing out some of the words. I came up with Humble Brew Co. I did some coffee icons as well. Maybe I could use that later on. It's always good to just play around and experiment and then see what type of letters you can do. Because it was a vintage type of style, I tried to, mix it up. Add some flourishes, add some, cool spikes and embellishments on the type. So that's what my goal was. And took my time, did different layouts, did different logo lockups of how the typography was going to be laid out. And the best thing to do is, use your ruler as well to draw out some lines. It can be slanted, curved, warped, anything you want. As you can see, I kept going and just played around with different styles. And you can see I'm using shapes and lines to, set a guide for where my type was going to be. But my main type was Humble, which I used, and you can see throughout the rest of the video of just some examples that I did throughout that, drawing session, and you can see me just draw out cool stuff. And yeah, so this is what you do sketches, and it'll really help out your logo designs and type look better. The more time you spend on this, it'll look a lot more better. So after I did these sketches, you can see later on that I blew it up, so I made it a bit bigger. I chose one style, and then I made it bigger, and then from that, I scanned it in and brought it into Illustrator, and that's when we start building our type, which is in the next video. So yeah, hope you enjoy this, some of these sketches and you can learn from it. And go ahead and do your own sketches now. Try and do like 10 different versions and figure out what you want to do, or you can just follow along and, learn of what I'm doing. So First thing you want to do after doing your sketches is get your image and scan it in at 600 dpi, or just take a photo with your phone and have that JPEG ready. And what you're going to do is just drag this JPEG into your Illustrator file, and it should load up there as you can see there. I'm just going to delete that because I've already got mine here. And what we're going to do with this is going to try and center it out in your middle of your artboard, to make it easy. And I'm just moving that around. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a clipping mask so I can cut off this excess stuff. But you can see how I did some different sketches first and did some iterations, and then I came up to this design here to get the type looking the way I wanted it. And it's good to use guides. You can see how I've used guides there when I sketched, so you can have a symmetrical type design. And I'm going to press M for the rectangle tool, drag this out, and I'm just going to change the color so you can see, and then select the image and the shape and press Command or Control 7. Once you do that, it's going to make a clipping mask as you can see here. And I'm just going to use the direct selection tool to select these points and edit that clipping mask and drag them in, just to make it more cleaner so we have our type there. And what I'm going to do is go to my layers panel. You can go to Window and Layers to open that up. And I'm going to double click on the layer. You'll get a box that pops up, and we can just rename it Sketch. You can just rename it there. And we want to tick the box Template. And then you can choose how much you want the opacity to go down. I just usually do 40%. And I want to press OK. And now what it does is lock the layer automatically, and now we can actually trace over it. And it's good to be dim in the background, so we can just see the lines there. Now go to your layers panel on the right hand side, and I'm going to press this little button here. That's going to create a new layer. Call this guides. So we're going to have our guides on that layer. And to get our guides, we're going to press Control or Command R. You can also go to View. You can also go to Guides here, and you can hide or lock guides as well. Also, you want to make sure you got smart guides all on by pressing Control Command U. That really helps out too. And you'll get these sliders on the left and on the top, and you can see you can just drag from it and drag those rulers out. So I'm going to start dragging some rulers just so we can use that. So we know where the center is. And then you can use these align tools up here to directly get the center going. And you can also hold Alt and Shift to copy it and keep it 90 degrees. So, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm trying to get the center points and creating these guides. You can also make guides from shapes. So I'm going to press L for the ellipse tool, hold Alt, and I'm just going to drag out because I want to get this curved line. And you can see that, and then I'm just going to hold Alt and drag this out a bit. And I'm just going to drag this. Doesn't have to be perfect, but we can fix it up later. But you can see we have this shape now. And I'm going to select it. You can go to View, Guides, and Make Guides. So now we have a guide for this curve bit section here. And we can use that for the type. And don't worry about if the sketch is not directly in line with the guides, because it's just using it as a place to work from, and we can always edit it and create it the way we want. So we've got those guides up, and now we're going to start creating our shapes. So we're going to make a new layer. So we'll keep guides on its own layer, so you can turn off the eyeballs if you don't want to see it, just like that. I might turn off the sketch layer, and I'm just going to move the type a little bit to left, and that's pretty cool. So just move that back in, and we'll lock guides, and then the next layer we'll call build, because we're going to build out our shapes. So we're going to use the pen tool, and first up, make sure you select a bright color. You can see in my color palette I have a pink color, and we're going to press P for the pen tool and select that pink color. And I'm going to usually work with 2 stroke points, so go up the top here and you can select your strokes. And what I'm going to do is start making out these shapes one by one. So you can see we've got our lines and our shapes, and what I do is click, and that will create an anchor point, and then you can click anywhere else to create that stroke. And I'm going to hold Shift, and Shift will make it 90 degrees or 45 degrees. So I'm going to hold Shift, select that, and then click. And then what you do is you want to hold Shift and try and keep the anchor points horizontal or vertical. So you can see what I'm doing here, holding Shift and clicking and dragging, and it's making that curve. make sure your fill is off. So you can turn the fill off by pressing forward stroke. And you can see how you get these nice curves when you do that. So you want to try and do this all the way around. And if you don't want this handle points, you can actually click again, left click on that corner, and it'll get rid of that. So you can see I'm going through here and just holding shift and clicking and dragging, trying to make these curves as good as possible. And you can always edit these handles as well, which will edit the stroke. So you can hold Alt or Option if you're on a Mac, and you can hold Shift or move that in. And what's it doing? It's decreasing the length of this handle on this point, and you're giving it more power to this other point. So I can drag this one out as well. So you're not stressing too much on one anchor point. So try and get the anchor points and the handles to share the weight, because then the curve will be a little bit off. So I'm just going through here and trying to use as many not so many anchor points as needed. Try and use as least as you can. So you can see I'm just working my way through, and then just showing that out. You can use the direct selection tool by pressing A and select points, and you can actually just select that point and move it across by using the arrow keys to move it as well. So you can see we've already got one shape. I can select it, press Shift X to see how it's looking, and we can actually go back in here and tweak any parts we don't want or don't like. So you can see this curve here is looking a bit off, so I can actually move this anchor point up by selecting it, and then maybe press P for the pen tool, and maybe I want to move this handle in to make it less curvy, or maybe I want to make it thinner and I want to move this in. So you really have a lot of freedom, and you can always play around with it as well, just to make it look as good as possible and try and keep those curves smooth. You can see here it's looking a bit off. Sometimes it doesn't have to be fully 90 degrees, but you can see how I'm just, changing the angles here to make it look better there. And I'm just going through editing these handles. And another cool trick as well is if you want to round it off, you can select this anchor point and drag this circle in, and it's going to curve that. But keep in mind when you do that, it's going to make an extra anchor point. So now we got one here and one here, but you can see the curve is really nice now. So just keep in mind when you're working with that type or those anchor points. And then we're just going to make these next parts. It's easier if the parts are separated, because then you can go back and edit it the way you want. So I can come through here. I'm just holding Shift, and then I'm just left clicking. And for this bottom section, I'm going to drag and try and get a nice curve there. Then click on that point and click, and then hold Shift because I want to have this pretty straight. Then click here and click here. So it doesn't matter if it overlaps, because we're going to have it as a fill, as you can see. So it's kind of looking nice. It's taking shape, and you want to try and keep the weight consistent. You see how this part is a bit thicker and this part is a bit thinner. So what we can do is use a direct selection tool, click and drag, and you can select an area, and we can actually just press down and edit those. And you can see this is a bit off, so we can just actually extend this out to here. So we have that whole piece. And then I try and want to keep these points straight, so I'm going to drag this in. You can see I've got the smart guides turned on, and I'm pretty much aligning all these points here. So I'll click and drag, select those, and if you go to the top, click on Align to Key Anchor, and we can click this button, and you can see how it just moved. You see this, it will move to this anchor points here, so it'll align everything to the left. So now we know this is straight. Then we can just edit that. And if it looks a bit funny, or the weight, we can always just edit those. So that's looking pretty sweet. And we can always come back, select the points we want to edit, and edit those. And now I'm going to go to the U, and we'll continue to do this through the whole way through when creating all these letters and shapes. The key is to just take your time, don't rush. because you want to make it look good as good as possible. Clicking and dragging there. And you can see because the type's on an angle, I'm trying to make the bottom look like it's on an angle. So I'll click that. And it's always good to zoom in and use the guides as a support system to help you out there. And what I usually do, I select it and just select the fill. So I just press Shift X just to quickly check how it's looking, and then I can go back and see what the problems are. So you can see this is too long. So I'll bring this in and extend this because it's not thick enough. And just align this again using the same thing. Select the points you want, key anchor, then you can actually align it to the left, or you can go top or bottom. You can see how it lines up there, and then I'll go in here and just edit it, put it down on an angle a little bit. So aligning is very good because you'll make it consistent and symmetrical. So you can see here that this needs to move like that. So it's already looking a bit better just by editing it. And I always zoom out to check, where it's looking, how it's looking. So cool, we've got those letters happening. And we can always go back and edit it if we see some things that are off. And I'll bump the stroke there, and then I'll just work on this. So you want to make sure with curves that you're doing as least anchor points as you can to get those nice smooth curves, as you can see. This inside circle, you don't have to be perfect, but and we can just scale this down as well, just to get the size you want. And you can see I'm just testing it. And I like to I'll have these rounded off. As you can see that's rounded off. I'll also do it for this side too. So you select the anchor point. Then you see the little circle. If you're in CC, you can see this little circle. If not, you can edit the corners up from here. As you can see there. But I'll just round this off. And I'll just keep tweaking these lines until they look smooth. Just compromise if you have to. So you can see how we're adding these points, those handles. And what else I like to do as well, you can see how it's pointy here. Maybe I don't want that pointy. Go to window and we can go to stroke, and then we can click these little round cap, and then the middle bit, and that will round it off. So you can see now it's rounded, which is pretty sweet. And I like having that. So you can see we've made some progress here. And it's looking... Keep it to be like that. Actually, we'll keep it straight. I'm just going to Control Z that. And yeah, that looks pretty fine. So we're just going to move on and create the rest. You can also press M for the rectangle tool. And you can see how the L is just pretty much a rectangle or a square. So we can just use that to an advantage and just use shapes instead of using the pen tool when we don't need it. And then you just go here, press A for the direct select tool, which is the white mouse. And then go in here and edit these individual pieces or points. You can also press V for the selection tool and then go into isolation mode. So now I'm in isolation mode. I can go in here and it makes you just isolate that one shape or stroke out, and then I can go in and edit it because sometimes there's too many things around. And then you can see you've got that. And I'll drag this. Sweet, so I'm starting to piece this together. And I'm going to copy this shape over here because I want to keep it consistent. We'll check these letters, select them all, press Shift X, and then you can even close the guides as well by pressing Control or Command semicolon, or go to View and you can go Guides and you can go Show Guides or turn them off. So you can see there, we'll go through and now I'll do some tweaking. You can see there's some inconsistencies with the weight, so we'll go in there and fix that up. So I'll select it all, press Shift X again, and then we'll just bump up the stroke again, just like that. And we'll select it all. We'll also go to our stroke and go round join, so we'll round that off. So all the corners are rounded now. And what we'll do, we'll just move some of these, space out some of these letters. Try and keep it all in line at the top there, which is the cap height. And we'll just move this, fix the spacing or the kerning to make it even. So I'm just going through here and selecting the pieces one by one. And you can see here, when you're doing these letters, it's okay if it's a round letter. So if it's like an O, or you can see the B or the U, it's alright to go over the line, because then it will naturally look too squished if it's up like on the line. It will look too off. So that's fine. So now what I'll do is I'll press M and I'll go find a nice width from the letters, change the color. I might do a green, and then we're going to shift to the stroke. And then what I'll do is I'll copy this all the way across to make sure it's consistent. So you can see here the weights are a bit different, so we can actually try and copy this. So we'll bring these points and we'll drag them across like that, just so we can get the same weight. Make sure the stroke is the same so you can tell the difference. So I'll fix that up. Then I'll go through and use the direct selection tool. And edit these points. just to make it more in sync and consistent, so then it will look better. I'm just holding Alt and Shift, copying them across. With the B, it can be a little bit tricky, because it's got a lot of curves. You can see it's a bit thinner down here, so we can actually edit this. I'm going to rotate this by going in the corner, holding Shift, and drag that out. And we'll see if it's roughly the same size. So just go to the bottom here. Yeah, it's looking the same. So this part is very important. It's good that you make sure that your type is symmetrical and it works well. So just fix that one, and then it's a bit crooked, so I'll use this. Sweet, so we've done all that, and we'll just go ahead and delete these boxes now. You also want to make sure up the top here, forgot to do that, and it's the same as well. It doesn't have to be all the same thickness, but make sure that it's all aligned. So you can see, I just want to make sure the stroke's the same. You can see how the E here, it's a bit, so we can make that smaller there, or we can actually just leave it like that, but we'll make sure that this is all straight. And then we'll make that go up, so that's all even. So if there needs any spacing done, you just go back and edit it. So that's looking cool. Turn the guards off and just have a look. It's looking pretty even. And you can see here that because these pieces are together, you want to make sure it overlaps a bit. So we can go back and edit. So what we're going to do is going to add these little spikes now on the corners and sides of our type. We're going to go to our shape tools on the left here, right click, and you'll see you'll get the star tool. I'm going to grab that and click and drag, and then press the down arrow key and you'll make a triangle, as you can see here. And then we're going to just make it just like that, and you can see here we'll just, doesn't have to be perfect, but we're just going to make it a bit more fat. You see you get these points here, just delete those and then press Control J or Command J and it'll join it. Now it's just 3 anchor points, and we might make it a bit thicker. 1 2 3 1 2 3 and then 1 2 3. So that's fine. You can also scale it down as well. Maybe it's a bit too spiky. Just like that. So I'll go ahead, just copying this across and, you know, placing it like that. And try and make it align and consistent. If there's spacing issues, then try and just make them go more inwards. So this adds a bit of dimension to the type. It makes it look more vintage and it gives some flavor to it. So you can see that we've got those spikes as well. And if you want to add a bit of an angle, you can actually go to shear. So click this little button here. It's like a scale tool. Click on shear, and if you click and drag, you'll see it will shear the shape. So if you want to make it go on a little bit of an angle, we can do that, or you can just leave it straight. It's up to you really. So we've got those little spikes, and now what we're going to do is start adding effects. We're going to go to Window Pathfinder, click that, and you'll get a box pop up. What we're going to do, we're going to select the B first, select that, and we're going to click the second button on the shape modes, and that's going to cut out the shape. So now you can see it's one shape, just like that. And then we're going to select all the type and click Unite. So you want to make sure you click the first button there, and that's going to unite everything. So that's pretty cool. And what we're going to do now is drag another artboard across there, because maybe we want to leave this shape. Maybe we want to edit it later, so we can leave that there. And we're going to start working with this type here. And you can see you can even turn the guides off. We don't really need them now, but that's fine. And you can see that that's looking pretty cool. And what we're going to do now is start creating some effects and using some color. So what I usually do first is I'll just play around with the color, and I'll add a background, press M, and press Control Shift left semicolon, and we'll choose a dark blue here. And what Control Shift left semicolon does is bring it to the back. If you do the opposite, when you press right, it'll bring it to the top and that to the back. So we're going to have that. You can put the background on a separate layer if you want. I made a new layer here called effects, but we can just call this background, and I'll just click this little color here and drag it up, and then we'll drag this to the bottom here and lock that. So we've got our background blue locked in there. And we've got our type now. So what I usually like to do is we'll start adding some shadows and stuff like that. So because our type is united, it's now a group. What we can actually do now is press Control 8, or you can go to Object, Compound Path, Make, and now it's a compound path. So now if we add a gradient to it, it's going to affect the whole shape and not just each separate letter, as you can see there. And so that's going to be handy for later. But first, what we're going to do is we're going to select the shape and go to Object, Path, Offset Path, press Preview, go to Round, and then we are going to do about 5 points, press OK. And then what we're going to do is actually make a blue. So we want to have this stroke, as you can see, and we're going to use that, and I'll show you in a second. We're going to go back, press Object, and we're going to go back to Offset Path. This time we'll make it a little bit bigger. So we'll do around 10. Press OK. And what we're going to do is use one of these patterns. So I've already made a pattern, and it's a stroked pattern. And what we're going to do is going to bring this to the back. And this black stroke we made before, we want to just change that back to blue. And it's going to create some spacing here. So you can see we've got like our shadow effect with the lines, and we've got this spacing, so it gives it some breathing room. So what we're going to do with this pattern here, as you can see that there's lines in my palette. The Cool thing with pattern swatches is you can, create them big and small. I've also got this dot one as well, which we'll use later. So we've got this, and a trick that I use is select it, go to Object, Transform, and go to Scale. And what we can do this, turn off Transform Objects, go to Preview, and then we can actually make them really thin or really big. And it looks better when it's actually really small. So maybe 40% or maybe 30% looks good. And I'll stick with 35 and then press OK. So you can see that it's scaled it down. So if I press Ctrl Z, you'll see the bigger, what it was before and what it's now. So it looks better. We can also change the rotation of it by going Transform and go to Rotate. This time, make sure it's ticked off and Transform Patterns is ticked on, and we can actually change the stroke just like that, or the rotation or the angle. So maybe we'll do 40 degrees, press OK. So now I've got these lines and it's at an angle. And what we can do is, if you don't want it directly on the outside, you can actually just bring this. I'm going to select it, hold Shift and press right once and down once. So now you can see it's like a shadow. So it's a bit thick, but we can actually play around and move it across a little bit. Just like that. Just play around. You can also make this bigger as well, this path, by adding a stroke to it. And then you can see it adds more space to the shadows there. So cool, as you can see we've got that happening and it's looking pretty sweet. So we've got those lines, and another cool thing is if we go to our transparency panel by going Window, Transparency, and you can actually play around with these, and you can get like a nice dark shadow there if you want to make it dark, color burn, or play around with color dodge. You can see it goes a bit pink, which is pretty cool, or hard light. You can play around with those and do whatever you want. I'm just going to leave it on normal for now. And you can see we've got that. So now what I'm going to do is add a bit of a gradient. So I like to press Control C, Control F, select the whole shape. And because it's a compound path, it's going to work on the whole thing. So now we've got a copy on top. And we're going to go to our gradient panel and then make a gradient. So if you just click on the color in your gradient panel, also go to Window and Gradient to open that. And we're going to go to 90 degrees. And if you click this little button in the left side here, it's going to reverse it. It's going to do that. And I'm just going to drag the colors we want onto the gradient. So I usually use a darker color and a lighter color. So you can see that it adds a bit of dimension. And I can actually drag this little slider in the middle here. You can see here, if you drag that, it's going to add a nice tonal effect there. So we've got, a bit of shadow down here and it's more lighter up there, which actually looks pretty nice. So that's looking good. And what we're going to do now is stack on some more effects. So we'll select it again and we'll go Control C, Control F. We'll make a copy. And what I like to do is we'll just adjust it a little bit. So we'll move it a bit to the left, to the right, sorry. And you can actually go to transparency and you can actually go multiply here. Or color burn. Color dodge, or soft light. Actually, I might we'll put it on multiply just to add a nice tone there. And you can also actually copy this on top, Control C, Control F, bring it to the front, and then we're going to select that one we just made, and then go to Unite again. And instead of Unite, we're going to do the cookie cutter. And now it cut these shadows. So you can see what we did. And now we have this shadow on just that bit we want there. You can see, and it's added a bit of a shadow here. And what we can do is we can actually change the color to a blue, just to get those shadows on the right hand side. And you can see there it looks nice. And it's separate. Just like that. So that adds a bit of dimension to that as well. Another cool trick as well to add some more patterns. If you want to add more patterns inside, you can actually go select it, go to object, go back to offset path as well. And this time we're going to do the opposite. So we're going to go minus. And what's that going to do? It's going to, I'll just make sure I got the right one selected. Yeah, so I've got this, and we're going to go to offset path again, do the opposite. So make sure it's in the middle, center of the shape. We'll go maybe 3. Press OK. And then we're going to press Shift X to make it a stroke. And then I'll just change the multiply so you can see it. So we've got a stroke here. We'll bump that up to 2 points. So you see we've got a bit of a stroke here. So you can actually, make a fill out of that, or leave it on stroke, or also you can add a pattern. So I'm going to click on my other pattern now, the dots. So you can see we've got a pattern here, and I'll do the same again. We'll go to object, transform, and then I'll start scaling it down. And make sure tick that box off. So it just adds a bit of more dimension. So I'll add that. And then I'm going to go to rotate as well to 40 degrees. Press OK. And you can play around with the blending modes again to see what effect you want. Lighting looks pretty cool, but we'll just leave it on. We'll leave it on color burn, so you can see it's adding some more detail. So if you zoom out, you can see it looks like there's lines going through it, and it looks really good. But if you zoom in, you can see that the all little dots. So the more effects, the more it stacks up and adds it together, which is pretty nice. Another cool thing is to add some highlights as well. So like we did with these shadows, we can actually do the same. So we can actually make a copy of this again. So you can see this. We'll make it white for now, and then I'm going to go to the left here. So you can see, and then I'm going to make a copy of the one in the background, and then bring that to the front, and then select the white one by holding shift so they're both selected, as you can see there. And I'm going to go back to my Pathfinder tool, and then we're going to cut that out. So we've got a bit of highlight on the left here, which might be a bit too much. Too thick, but that's all right. And we can actually play around the blending modes once again, see some, and then find something we actually like. Or you can actually just drag it on the side there. Soft light looks pretty good. So actually, yeah, so you press right, and you can actually, it looks better on the actual shape. So it doesn't matter if it's running over a little bit, but you can see how it's just add a bit of that highlight on the shape and the shadow. So it's making it look a bit more 3D now. So we have that. We've added some effects. We've added some shadows, some patterns into the mix, and it's really starting to stand out more. I'm also going to add another gradient now as well, so just to make it pop some more. So we'll copy, Control C, Control F. We've got that shape again, and then we'll just make another gradient. So we've got a gradient, but I'm just going to use a bit more lighter color. Make sure it's on linear as well, and we're going to keep it like this. And we'll change the color like that, and then we can actually play around with these blending modes again. So you can see get some nice brown colors. That's a bit too much. Screen, color dodge, overlay is nice. Soft light's pretty good as well. So you can see if I drag it off, it adds that just bit of a punch of color. So it's on soft light and it just adds a bit more vibrancy to the actual shapes, which is pretty cool. And also this shadow as well, I might play around with that. Looks a bit, maybe we can even lessen it so it's not too strong. So I'll just drop the opacity of that for 90% so it blends more in with the blue. So sweet, we've got all that, and now we're going to start adding a bit of texture and make the background look a bit more better. So now I'm going to go and make a background. I'm going to click a layer. I'm going to make this layer a texture layer, and I'll just close that off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to one of my files here, design resources, and I'm going to go to textures, and we'll just go get a grunge texture. And we'll just find something that's a little bit subtle, not too dangerous. So we'll pick this one here. Press Control C and then Control F. So I'll just copy this, and I'm going to make sure it's on the right layer. So on a texture layer, and we're going to bring this to the back. So just below our background. And now I'm going to change the color of this. We'll make it the blue, and then we'll play around with the blending modes again. So you can see you get some effects, soft light, and then we'll just dim that a little bit, and then I'll create another copy and then just move it around the opposite way, and we can actually make this light on screen. And I'll press M for the marquee tool. We're going to make a clipping mask like we did before, and then select that, press Control 7, and then we'll do it again. Make another one. Just like that. So we have clipping mask of our textures in the background. As you can see there, it's in its own texture box. So that's a good thing about using those clipping masks. So we've got that. We've got a bit of texture in the background happening. And now we're going to add some gradients as well. So I'll make another layer there. We'll go glow. I'll lock the texture layer. And what I'll do, I like to make a circle. So I press L for the ellipse tool, make a circle. And then once again, we'll drag these colors into the slider down here. And we'll do radial this time, so it comes from the middle. And we'll just press this little color slider, and we're going to change the opacity here to 0%. Just like that. Play around with the slider here. And we're going to go to our transparency and then play around with the colors here. Soft light actually looks pretty good, and we can actually make this big here just to add a bit of a subtle glow in the background. So it adds a bit of a nice tone like that, just to highlight our type a little bit more. So once you've done that, you can add a bit more texture on top, or you can even add some color. So I'll press M again. I'll make sure this one goes above. So I'll just make a new layer there, drag that. And then I can actually play around with this. You can see if you want to add a bit more glow. 90%. So you can add some glow there. I actually like the pink there. That's over the type, so it might overpower the type, but we can just drop the opacity maybe 30%. So it adds a bit of tonal range there. So yeah, that's how you create some vintage cool type, and that's how you manipulate the type, add some effects on it. using patterns, textures, and even creating a background that looks a bit more rustic, which is pretty cool. So I hope you enjoy the course and look forward to making the next one for you. So what we're going to do, we're going to add our type on a mock-up in Photoshop. You can see if I go to Photoshop, I just downloaded this free mock-up. You can get cool mock-ups on Graphic Burger, on Free Pick, on Freebies Bug. There's really a lot of sites you can download those type of mock-ups on, and we're going to use this and add our logo to the middle there on that mug. And so what we're going to do first is go to Illustrator and grab your type. We don't want all the effects, so we're just going to hold Alt and Shift, select the type, and drag this across. And we'll just bring it to this artboard over here. And what we're going to do, we're just going to make it black for now. And we might add some type just to make it a little bit more fun. So I'm going to press T for the type tool and start typing out some words. Maybe it's a coffee roasting club. So I'll call it coffee or coffee bar. Italian coffee bar. And I'm just going to choose, a reasonably simple font. We'll go BW Modleca, which is a nice font. And we're just going to make it small. I'm going to center that and just to add some depth. Actually, I'm going to add this on the top, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to Object, Envelope Distort, Make with Warp, and we're going to add our arc. You can see you got a selection here. You can do arc, and you either bend it, left or right, and you can change the vertical or horizontal. Leave on horizontal, and we'll give it about a, we'll go 25% bend, which is kind of nice. So we've got that going, and then what we're going to do is we'll add some Roman numerals. So we'll do MMXVI, which I think is 1995 or 2016 or something. And I'm going to add that in there. I'll add it under this. And make sure the color is the same black, so we'll add that. So we've got a bit of like a name. The main coffee club is called Humble. Got like the date when it was created, which I'll look up. 2016. Okay, so pretend it was created last year. So we've got that, and then we can add some more. Just holding Alt and Shift and grabbing that type, and it really copies it. And then what we could do is type in a location. We can just do Sydney downtown. And we could curve this if we want to, or just leave it like that. And we'll make it the same. We'll make it a bit bigger. And then I'm selecting these two. And then you click on the one you want to align to. And go at the top here, you can just align that center. You can see how it's aligning. This bottom type is aligning to that type up there. And we'll just drag it down. And that looks pretty sweet. So I'm going to press Ctrl G, select it, and that will make a whole group. So that's the shortcut to make a group. And then I'm going to press Ctrl C to copy it. Let's go in Photoshop. And now I'm going to double click on this Smart Object layer. And you can see how there's already a logo there. And what we're going to do is just turn that off. And then we'll click on the layer and press Ctrl V. Press OK, select Smart Object. It's going to copy our logo into here. And we're just going to make it a bit smaller. Press Enter. And then press Ctrl S to save that. And you can see there that it's added it up there. And we're just going to adjust it until it fits within the middle there. Cool, that's looking good. And then we can just get rid of this Smart Object. You can see you zoom in there, it's got our logo, which is pretty sweet. So it's a fun way to, put your logo or badge design or vintage type on a, on an example, and it really makes it come alive and show your client, or just make it look nice and presentable. So that's awesome, and I hope you guys enjoyed the course and look forward to making another one.